Hello and welcome to AXSChat. We're delighted to be joined today by Julian John. Julian is the CEO of Delsion. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Julian. You were introduced to us by the lovely Kate Nash of Purple Space, who we're collaborating with, and we're all playing a part in the Purple Light Up campaign for the 3rd of December. But I know you've had a really interesting journey into the inclusion space and are doing great work, but better for us to hear it from you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be working in the space and how Delsion came into being.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. I love watching the chat. So to start with a little bit about myself is that my career background is in retail. In human resources and learning development. Been fortunate to have worked in that space since I left university, and been fortunate to have done some great work around engagement and also inclusion, resourcing, recruitment. But I suppose my biggest piece has been getting potential into businesses and getting the most out of individuals, to which I've had limited success at, but that's what my driver has always been in the workplace. 13 years ago, I was driving home from work when I collapsed, and it was discovered that I had an acquired brain injury. The impact of that left me housebound for about 3.5 years, rehabilitation for 5 years to learn to stand, work and talk again, even to the point that lost everything, became homeless for a while. The impact of that was also that my father had terminal cancer at the time and my wife suffered from cancer during that. So with regards to an introduction to the world of disability, it was very, very quick and very sharp. But I suppose through all of that, I always clung on to my career and my work background, which was human resources. And it was the point of trying to get myself back into work, having recruited over 2,500 people myself, that I suppose I saw for the first time the barriers that disabled people face while trying to get into the workplace. And that didn't sit with me as right from all my HR experience. So I thought, now's my opportunity to do something about it. So I started Delsion off as my own pathway back into work. So it's a people and development consultancy that focuses on 3 aspects. It focuses on people solutions, it focuses on learning development, but also focuses on inclusion. However, there was no point in me just getting back into work and not learning from my experiences and what I've been through. So I set a social goal for the business to make Wales a leading nation for inclusion, specifically around disability in the workplace. And I suppose as a bit of an announcement, the business has changed over the last 3 years since we've run it. So we're now in the process of converting into a social business. So it will still do the learning development stuff, we'll still do the inclusion stuff, but our drive is around our social goal and inclusion. So that's what we've done, and that's where we are now.
Fantastic, and it's an incredible journey back from a real adversity. I know also that you set ambitious goals around disability confidence. So becoming the first disability confident city. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And then I know Deborah's got some questions as well.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to be asked to, and this is before I was working, so I was long-term unemployed for 9 years, and I was invited to the launch event of Disability Confident in Cardiff, and I'm not going to, I basically stood there and asked for someone to give me a job, and there was a couple of employers in the room, but not as many as I thought. So that stuck with me to the point of opening Delsion. And I wanted to prove a point that you can engage employers absolutely around disability in the workplace, again, from my experiences. So I set a bold claim, as I tend to do, to make Swansea the first disability confident city in the UK in 2015. And that was just spending on time, knocking on doors, engaging with employers, bringing them to an event with lots of follow-up and a bit of legacy around it. To make a difference and look at what makes up the employment within the city of Swansea and making sure that those employers were in the room. So we had 70 employers there with follow-up afterwards as well.
So Julian, I'm just stunned by your story. I'm just stunned by it. I mean, you have a disability that comes upon you very quickly. Your father's walking cancer path. Your wife is. You lose your job. You can't get employed. You're homeless. Often we think people can't come back from this, and yet not only did you come back from this, you came back from this and proved that through all of these experiences, you can help others to have much better lives. That's just really. That's like, is it, a story I would see on the movies that almost feels like it's not even possible. So I think it's such a beautiful story, and I can't imagine what a wise entrepreneur you are because of all those experiences. And another point, we often see all over the world that people with disabilities become entrepreneurs because they can't get employed in the workforce. And so we've had some guests on talking about this issue, but I just feel a little bit in awe of your journey. I really do. Let me just be in awe. And I know that you have adopted a daughter, and this morning you were going through some things with her. You just seem like a man that is very human and resilient and determined to make the world a better place. And I feel very grateful that you're in the world. So sorry to compliment you so much, but what a journey. What a journey.
I'm humbled by those kind words. There's a couple of things in that, I suppose, with regards to, I talk about my background just because people need to understand what we've gone through. I talk about specifically my father's cancer and my wife's cancer on the point of understanding what they went through in the workplace as well. And that's what sums up some of the issues around disability engagement, certainly around cancer abuse, how to engage, not having the information. So what do you do around that? And with regards to trying to prove anything, the only thing I ever want to prove to anyone is that I'm employable. As a disabled person, that I'm employable. Look what I've done, look what we've achieved. I'm quite happy to wave my own flag around it. But if that's part of the message that gets out. And enterprise, I'm so passionate about disabled enterprise. We're currently looking at trying to do a project in Wales. But if you just look at resilience, problem solving, all those sort of issues. I do mentoring outside of some of our work for enterprise. And if you look at competence behaviors or look at what sort of attributes that you want, you can't fit the bill better than some issues with regards to around some of the disabled aspects.
Julian, your story reminds me of something. Cisco. Cisco is a big multinational corporation, and they are employing people with disabilities in different countries. And they had an experience in Bangladesh that it just really surprised them, and it surprised me and other people as well. So they work with the academies to help other people, everybody, but also people with disabilities become Cisco certified. Which a lot of us understand that model. Well, they did that, and they hired quite a few people that were blind in Bangladesh. And they found, after they do a lot of studies, because these are call centers, and you know how call centers are, all the metrics and analytics. And so they found a few things that really surprised them. They found that these employees that were blind in Bangladesh were twice as productive as the non-disabled employees. That was interesting. And we're not saying every single person with a disability is twice as productive, but how interesting. But something that they found that surprised me, and then I thought, oh, I shouldn't be surprised by it, was that they found that these employees were more empathetic than the employees that didn't have disabilities. And the customers noticed, and the customers loved working with these specific employees that were blind. And the customers didn't know they were blind, but they found they were more empathetic to the problems that they were having. So having the kind of journeys that sometimes will crush us, the kind of journey that you took, and yet it made you so resilient. I think it makes you a wonderful spokesperson, and it allows you to help others that sometimes are on these really life can be really hard sometimes. So the resilience, the empathy, all of this makes us much better employees. So I don't want to hog the microphone. I know Antonio and Neil probably have comments, but let me turn it to you, Julian, because I think that's something that employers often don't realize that they're getting when they work with companies like yours to make sure that resilient people with disabilities can join their workforces.
And it's really interesting because of my HR and L&D background, and because of the work that we do around learning development now, that if you look at things like resilience, if you look around empathy, if you look around change management, these are all leadership qualities. So you can go into an organization, you can try and draw that out of individuals. Well, let's look at what the abilities are. Well, let's look at the potential of the individuals around there. So let's look at these competence behaviors. Let's look at them, and let's look at them a bit further out. And for me, everything that we do, it's just widening that talent pool, just taking those little blinkers off and just seeing the potential that's out there across the board, absolutely across the board.
Yeah, powerful. Neil?
Well, it's a great point, and yeah, what we often see is people afraid to take on people with disabilities because they assume that that's going to be increased absenteeism and all of these false assumptions, and actually having the data to disprove that is really powerful, and to have not just data but also the anecdotal evidence of real people's stories of how they can be successful, I think is really important, because there is an incorrect assumption that because someone has a disability that they're going to need more time off, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to be unreliable, when actually the reverse is often true. You know,
and it's an absolute fallacy, absolutely all the way across, all across the board. But the good thing is that the attitudes are changing. That organisations are getting into it. And from I'm a huge driver of strategy around inclusion, but around an inclusion strategy almost being via osmosis, where it touches every single part of the organisation, so it becomes a part of every single part of the organisation. It becomes mainstream. Just because it's part of the day job. People at every single level of the organisation will understand the benefits that inclusion brings to an organisation. And it does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it shouldn't be just the job of HR. This is everybody's job to be looking at this stuff, because it's everybody's job to make their part of the organisation more effective, their part of the organisation more welcoming, and everything else, and so it is something that is woven into the fabric of both society and how businesses work, and if we don't recognize that, then that fabric is weaker, and therefore we're losing out on something. Antonio, I know you had a question.
I do. I frequently, engage and talk with people who are related who work with startups, and some of these startups are focused on recruiting people, developers, technologists, and even sometimes besides startups, I know that sometimes agencies they also have a lot of junior recruiters working for them. They are the ones doing the initial process of selecting people or engaging with them, or even to search for new people that they then pass to their senior colleagues. So what type of work you think needs to be done in order to help younger employees working in human resources, startups, to change all these perceptions about hiring people with disabilities, considering that we are talking about a group here we have sometimes are completely out of the conversation that we are having here today?
I think you can link that initial contact piece with regards to recruitment, resourcing, agency, startups, also with a line manager piece as well. So that's a piece of almost like educating the masses. So how do you give people the comfort and the freedom to be inclusive with regards to the measurements that they feel they need to meet, with regards to the restrictions that they need to meet. And so everything that I do is about engaging and about educating. and just keep talking and understanding what the benefits are. And as Neil was saying, it's taken away those myths of it's going to be high labour turnover, it's going to be absence, there's legal risks, there's the cost to the business. And that's why I'm such a fan of the purple lighter, because it actually recognises the contribution economically that disabled people make. But that has to be driven from a strategy level. And this is why I keep on talking about the freedom for managers to be able to manage inclusively, and to recruit, and for agencies to go out and feel that they have got the measures in place which allows them to be inclusive in their recruitment.
Good point.
Yeah. I know that we're going through an exercise at the moment to redesign all of our job descriptions within our organisation, and we've got lots. We've got thousands of job descriptions because we've got over 100,000 employees, and we're trying to change the language to, talk more about we than you, to be gender neutral, to be age neutral, to be much more open to everyone, because when we looked at the job descriptions, they were very technical, very restrictive, and likely to push away really good talent that are put off right from the very get-go, just by even the language that we're using. And then, of course, the other piece that worries me somewhat at the moment is that we're saying, right, well, technology is going to completely revolutionize the whole recruitment process, and we're going to do all of these things, and we're going to use AI and everything else. My concern is that through using some of these tools, if we don't include a diverse set of people in the creation of these tools, that what we're going to end up doing is using these tools effectively filter out diversity in the recruitment process. So how do you think we can address some of that? Because you're more from an HR background than I am. So I'm interested to hear your points of view.
So someone walks into a room, into any HR department, or to a HR director, and says, I've got a fantastic way of revolutionizing the way that we recruit. We're going to resource from the widest possible talent pool. We're going to make it open to everyone. We're going to not limit ourselves to qualifications. We're going to look at experience. And I will guarantee that we will get that potential within our workplace. And when they're in that workplace, we are going to do the absolutely reach our utopia and manage people as individuals. Manage people as individuals and help them develop as individuals and get the potential out of them as individuals by meeting all their individual needs. And the HR director will go, wow, that's just absolutely fantastic. That's just inclusion. But when we have the inclusion conversation, it suddenly becomes a different conversation to a resourcing conversation. And when we look at how artificial intelligence comes into it, we've got to look at what the positive benefits and the positive aspects of that are to drive what our needs are. And I truly believe, so I'm 26 now, plus 20. So I've been around recruitment resourcing for a long period of time in HR. I truly believe there is not a better opportunity than now with regards to the current recruitment market to absolutely put our label of inclusion on there. We speak at great depth of millennials and looking at certain age groups and what we need to encompass that. And then for whatever reason, then disability gets deferred out of that, which is just bizarre. And we've got to stop looking at this silo approach. We just need to look at resourcing for everyone, inclusive of every single wish list that we have. That's my view of it. And it's absolutely doable. Absolutely doable. I wouldn't sit here and I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't think it was achievable. And that's not because of my personal experience. It's more from my career background than anything else. If I duck the argument,
no, you've made perfect sense. I just managed to mute myself. So absolutely, I think it's really important to welcome all of the talent. I'm somewhat playing devil's advocate here, in that what we often see is that in some of the efforts to be inclusive and set targets to be inclusive, that we actually then create silos for talent or silos for routes to entry.
Yeah.
So for example, oh well, you know, we want to recruit more graduates or more you know, more people from X background or more people from Y, or we want to train up so many people in this. We tend to sort of constrain ourselves by doing that. And then how do we find that balance between setting ourselves targets and stopping ourselves from being inclusive and finding the right person for the role?
So what would drive a, so me playing devil's advocate, what would drive a business to look specifically at certain areas, unless it specifically adds to that business? So if you're thinking of a resourcer model or thinking of employees that you want to bring into that organization or the potential within there, you need to look at inclusion overall. You need to get the best person through those doors to do that job. There's no real need to meet silos. And unless you're specifically looking at your inclusion makeup and you think you need to be wider. But if you're open to all, you will meet all those requirements. That's my view. And as I said, I'm quite happy to stand in any room with any person and look at any role of their organization and say where that matches and where that doesn't match, because you just want talent through the doors.
Yeah, I think it's, I think what's happened is, you know, you sometimes go, all right, well, we need to address our gender balance and we're going to do this. Oh, you know, well, actually, you know, BAME is an issue and disability is an issue, and in certain countries, you know, there are absolutely quotas and targets and everything else.
Yeah.
And so what you end up with is, oh well, you can only employ. And I saw this happen on Twitter to someone that's part of the sort of AXSChat community that went for a job, applied for the job that they're, you know, on paper qualified to do, but because they had a disability, they got referred to the disability department rather than put through normal recruitment channels. But because the disability department only had low-level jobs, because that was what the quota system supported, they were effectively excluded from the job that they could do, and too qualified to do the jobs that the disability department was putting on offer. That's not inclusion. And
that's marginalization. And this is where you get silos. You end up marginalizing. But let's go back to the strategy piece.
Yes.
And look at, as an organization, you just want talent through the doors. And I truly believe we're going to get to a piece that the successful organizations will prove that time and time again, and the other organizations will miss out. Not there yet, but we're certainly seeing strides in that direction. Certainly in the last 3 years, the way the conversations have moved on, it's great to see. And the way that certain movements have picked up, it's a good place to be at the moment.
Deborah, I know you have a question.
Well, Julian, I was wondering how are the businesses in Wales accepting this? I mean, do you see that they're buying into it? Or are they seeing the value? Or are they saying, oh, well, we can learn from other countries, we know this is happening? I was just curious how the businesses are responding to you in Wales.
So I'm on an education and engagement mission at the moment, and we're getting there. But I think the challenge certainly in Wales is that you're competing against other silos, and I think that's absolutely wrong. So the point of view that we'll take the inclusion approach, and disabilities at the forefront of that, and we just need to start understanding the widening of that talent pool. But yeah, and one of the other things that I'm trying to do is get Wales as a nation, and certainly as a government as well, to understand the benefits of being inclusive. We've got the perfect environment with regards to an infrastructure, a policy piece, whatever you want to call it, where we're a small country, but that means we can get things done quite quickly, and you can get to talk to a lot of the right people. And those conversations are starting to happen. So when we all start pushing all from the same direction, then that's where that engagement comes from. But that's where the focus is. Whatever gets measured gets done, whatever the focus is, I don't care what anyone says, that's when it'll happen. But yeah, we're moving in the right direction. Not there yet. I'm not ready to retire yet. And we're only just started on the path. But yeah, no, we're getting there. And we've got some fantastic things in the pipeline to start really pushing that agenda.
And you don't have to start from scratch. We know there's a lot that we do know, and Purple Space is a perfect example of that. I find there's some really innovative things happening in the UK that, for example, the US, Latin America, Central America, the Africas, the Asias can really build upon. And I'm really proud to be, bringing some of these best practices here to the United States. And as Neil said, we've done tons and tons and tons of studies, for example, in the US market that have proved, which practices work, which don't. And as you said, Julian, when things are measured and focused on, those are things that happen. We know that. And so I think it's important when we bring people like you that are experts in HR into these conversations. And I think that there's so much that Wales can learn from other parts of the UK, but as you're finding your own path and the way to go forward, we can all learn from that, because we're seeing often when a country is almost starting later, especially sometimes in the smaller countries, they can have an advantage of being more innovative than some of the gigantic countries like my beautiful country that sometimes we just can't get out of our own way. But I love being an American. So, I mean, I'm so proud of my country, but I just think it's interesting to watch what is happening around the world and how we can learn from each other.
But that's about sharing best practice, and that's about the whole global movement, and the whole global movement overcomes local barriers. Because if 95% of the globe is doing it, then why be in the minority around that piece? But yeah, there's some great things going on. I said disabled enterprise, we're having a push on. There's a big push with regards to the whole engagement piece around it. But I think that the opportunity to share best practice is absolutely key. Absolutely key. And certainly with regards to the States, I was over in the States last year and planning trips over again, just to be able to do that piece of share best practice. This is what we're doing. I sit down with people and say, look what's happening in other places. And that's the best benchmark.
I think so too.
And let's use that and let's surpass it. Because one of the other things that I tend to talk about is leading from the front. Because if you aim to be 10 years in front of another organization, another business, another sector, by being 10 years in the front, then you don't have to follow. That's where innovation then comes from, because you drive your own agenda. And that's my focus, is where we drive that own agenda. And then the inclusion agenda surpasses a mainstream agenda and then becomes part of the mainstream agenda. So, same with a lot of the technological aspects that have come through disability and accessibility. That's at the forefront. And that's where we need to be with the people side of things as well.
I agree. Antonio?
Julian, if you look back to the beginning of your career, and also to the years when you to the way how people with disabilities used to apply for jobs in the past, and the way how they were able to use and access to technology. So if you look today, you think that the fact that they have more access to technology, more access to information, also puts pressure on the side of recruiters, employers, and society in general, because they have a more sophisticated behavior. Do you see that happening?
I think, certainly in regards to technology, I think the biggest push is for employers to understand the accessibility technology that's out there. I think that is a big barrier that needs to be overcome at the moment, just to take away the old perceptions of what tech can actually do around accessibility. And I think there's also a position of there's so much technology out there at the moment, is for everyone to understand what the benefits of that are, because it's changing all the time. But I think there's also a position of the enterprises that come up with the technology to be able to get that in the public domain and the knowledge to be built up as quickly as possible. Interesting journey. I've swapped over to Microsoft just because of all their accessibility features, and they're fantastic. And I know they're doing a lot to promote it, but there's another opportunity to speak to employers to say, do you understand that some of the stuff you've actually got in your business is very accessible? Exactly the same as who really understands apart from someone that uses it, or the accessibility features on an iPhone, which is in the majority of people's pockets day in, day out. I think that's a bigger piece as well.
So I absolutely, I think that there's an awful lot of stuff out there, but there is a big educational piece to go through, and that awareness raising and that championing of, hey, we're here and we're here to celebrate is something that's behind the whole Purple Space employee network of networks that we're all engaged with. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the stuff that's happening at December the 3rd?
December the 3rd.
Yes, you've been going purple already.
Yes, so it's the purple light up. It's something I'm absolutely passionate about, and as I said before, I'm passionate about it on the basis that it's an opportunity to celebrate not only the economic contribution that disabled people make, but the contribution that disabled people make in the workplace. So I'll be open and honest. Kate's class was a dear friend of mine from Purple Space, and she put on Twitter her ideas, and I thought, there's an opportunity for this in Wales. Let's see what we can do. Last year, I was very, very fortunate that we had Cardiff City Hall at Purple, Millennium Centre in Wales, University of South Wales, the DVLA did some work. So we had instant engagement around it. This year, bigger, bolder, better. But there's two sides of it. It's lighting buildings at Purple, for those that haven't seen it yet. But it's also what organisations, networks do, individuals do. It's a disabled powered movement. What are the other activities they do on the day? So very excited for what's going on. Very excited of how much has been achieved in 12 months and what we've got in store for this year. But yeah, just keep an eye on Wales, because let's see if we can see if it's purple from the international space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're turning our global website purple at Atos. We'll be engaging as well, and AXSChat are absolutely getting engaged with Purple Space to help be the social media partner. So we'll be championing it too. I think it's really important to celebrate this, and it's it's really good to see it going international, because that's where it needs to be. It's an opportunity for everyone to celebrate. So I think that yes, I have to say Deborah's also an ambassador for Purple Space in the US. So we are purple all over. You know, there's purple here. There's purple on my phone. Yeah, we're purple. And it's a great opportunity to shout from the rooftops about how important it is for us to celebrate our identity and celebrate the contribution we make. So thank you for being part of it. I know you're going to have the purple paint out and the lights out, and you'll be tough competition for us. down. Yeah. We'll see if we can get some other landmarks done too.
It's a global movement, and it's great to see how quickly and what the momentum is behind it. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. It is, and the last year when y'all did it, the U.S. we did. The message had not gotten out to the U.S. because I know the U.S. corporations they're very, very committed. I mean, you mentioned Microsoft, very committed to this, and so I'm really excited to be an ambassador to help people know that it's a very small thing you could do to just get started. Let's just use the purple colors so that we can start the conversations. I mean, we've been having this conversation in the U.S. for 28 years. Our Americans with Disabilities Act is 28 years old, but still a lot to do, and this is a global issue. So anyway, thank you, Julian, and everybody for everything that we're doing to make sure people understand the importance and resilience of this population.
Absolutely. But here's one for you, Deborah. I was over in the States last year, and I met with Disney in Florida.
Wow, I love Disney.
Yeah, to ask them to light the castle purple. Oh. So they couldn't do it last year. So let's have a joint effort this year to see what we can do.
Yes, I agree, because I am good friends with Jay Cardinelli, who of Disney, and also my business partner, Richard Streitz, used to work for Disney. So, and Disney wants all of us to have the magical experience, and they hire people with disabilities too, because they want their employees, their cast members to look like their guests.
Yes.
So it's a wonderful example. So yeah, Julian, we'll be talking a lot. Let's turn the U.S. purple, and Canada and Mexico and Central America and Latin America. Yeah. So let's all go purple. I love purple.
Fantastic. So we're at the end of our half hour. So it just remains for me to thank you, to give thank yous out to all of the people that are supporting us, especially Barclays and of course my ClearText for doing the live captioning today. Thank you, Elaine, and all of the team. So thank you very much. We look forward to you joining us on Twitter.
Thank you. No, thank you for the opportunity again.
Thank you, Julian.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.